A update on the diesel dragster, the diesel eater. So, let me get this helmet off here. And I meant to show that to you guys. You know, this is just a standard $36 helmet that I got off of Amazon. And this is just a Easy Weld that I bought off of Amazon, which is like $250 or whatever. So, like, for $260, I think that's what this was as a package deal. You can be up and running and welding and everything. And I really recommend these Easy Welds. They work really good. They're rated for 140, which means that they'll weld up to 1/4 inch really well. I'll make sure to do a dedicated video on this, comparing it to my Hobart 140 that you see stuffed in the corner over there. But it keeps up. Running flux core, without question, these will do just as much as a Hobart 140 without any issue whatsoever. But anyways, moving on to the current project issue. So I've had to put spacers in, which we discussed previously. So these are tack welded in right here so that I can ream these holes out a little bit easier after I weld this in order to strengthen it up. And all these are, in usual junkyard fashion, is just the deck lift bar sliced in half. I discovered that the mounting holes on the deck lift bar were exactly the same as the bolt hole size for the transmission, so just drilled another hole out. And what I'll show you here is, you can see, so I drilled another hole right here, and you can see that this is flat, and these are egged out just a little bit to be able to clear that transmission. So I got that all spaced in. I need to weld up all of this. I also need to come down in here, and where this dot is, there's a matching one on the other side for the upper transmission mount, which will bolt in right there. And then we should be good to go on trying to figure out where the high-low is going to go. I probably won't get to that in this video, but we'll see. On the other end of the spectrum here, now, this is just mock-up. These are going to get replaced with Heim joint and round tubes. So this is all just in here for mock-up, but you can get the general idea of what's going on here. So basically, I need the engine to drop down into right in here. So what I did was I cut this and I pushed it back, because originally it was about yay long and it would have hit the bottom of the motor at full turn. So now I've got it to about right here, which gives me this entire area to be able to drop the motor down in, plus or minus a good 4 to 5 inches to either side. So this will be the next project once we get all of that figured out, is where we're going to put that motor. On the front here, we've got it actually plate mounted to the front. Plus we've got it kicked out towards the front just a little bit in order to help with drag racing and keeping it in a straight line. And like I said, these are just temporary welded on here so that I have something to go by when I end up getting the round tubing to be able to put in. So what I'll end up doing once I get my round tubing that I'm out of stock on right now is I'll end up slicing these, and I'll sleeve a Heim joint on, and then I'll weld it over the top of this. And this piece here, all of this will get replaced with a Heim joint and a bar. So this ugly thing is bent and it's horrible and it flexes, but it'll hold it good enough for testing it and getting it up and running. So I'm going to get to the boring part of welding all of that into place. Then we'll flip it over, we'll put the transmission in, and see if we end up with a rolling assembly. Well, before we talk about the elephant in the room, let's talk about the transmission first, since that went good. So here we are. I ended up finding with this high-low that it just took a lot of tack weld it and move it, and tack weld it and move it, and tack weld it and move it, until I finally got it to the point that it worked right. So the whole template idea did not work. And I realized why it is the template idea didn't work, and I'll show you why. It's because when I created those two mounting holes, I actually ended up bringing everything up into the frame almost about 1.5 inches or so. And that meant that this ended up about 1.5 inches taller than what it was on the other piece of GT6000 frame, which meant that any measurement across this upper surface going down meant jack diddly. So what I ended up doing was I ended up taking and putting the bar in place and hooking up this little 40 series extended chain coupler, and I C-clamped these on and just monkeyed with it. And once I finally had it in a point that it would stay, I welded it in place, took the C-clamps off, double-checked everything, and went from there. The other thing is I actually ended up having to weld it in place twice. And the reason being was the first time I welded it in place, this bar I had lining up with the edge of this. And I discovered that meant that I could not pass a belt past here in order to put it on this pulley. So I ended up having to relocate it down further so it's below this and creates a spot that you can put the belt through. So these right here, once those were mounted and for sure on bottom, I just drilled these out and I put a couple of bolts in there with a couple of nylon lock washers, nylon nuts, I mean. And these are the stock size GT tires that usually are on 6000s and on GT 5000s. They're junk, but they will work in order to go and be able to get this thing up and running for a test run. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we? So right there is basically my only choice to put the motor. And the reason being, as we discussed earlier, is because of this steering. Now, I did debate, as a buddy of mine pointed out. Now, he stated on the bottom, I could make a pillar that came down off of the bottom of this in order to pass underneath the motor, and then I would be able to go from there. But the problem with that is then it puts another leverage point on an already stressed out area. And I like that concept, but the other problem is this is a 12-inch pulley. So going drag racing, the concept is big engine, small transmission. These have a tapered shaft pulley, which A, you can't buy anymore, and B, is an utter total pain to have made. So this is potentially the biggest pulley I could put on here in order to try and get the best ratio I possibly could. So this is a 12-inch pulley from Tractor Supply. And I've also got somewhere around here a 1-inch hub. I'm going to grind this down because it's a little bit over 1 inch and cut a keyway into it so I can put a hub onto it. And then we'll line up that pulley. But the problem is that pulley right there is sitting almost on the frame rail. So if I center this up a little bit, that's my clearance on that frame rail. And I'm this close to the frame rail, which means I can't pass a belt through there if I try and drop that motor down into the frame. Which means the motor really kind of needs to sit on the frame and not down into it as much as I don't like. And that means that the hood at its natural level would be about right there, which means like this. So now we get into the aesthetics side of this build. You know, throw down in the comments, what do you think? Do I blatantly have it stabbing out through the top of the hood with a plasma cuttered out silhouette of it in the hood that sits down over it? Do I put a cowl hood and try and hide the almighty diesel? Or do I do kind of a mishmash of both? Do I have the intake coming out of a cowl and a cowl over the top of this, and maybe have the exhaust coming out the side of the cowl and down in some form? That's another thing I've debated, is whether maybe have the exhaust come out the side of the cowl with a clamp-on pipe and have it come down and shoot down at the ground maybe, and then back. I don't know. I'm really in a debate here. I haven't at all figured out what I'm going to do. But at this point, no matter what, the motor is going to probably have to go in its current location. And it sucks I can't fit it under the hood, but sooner or later you got to face the fact you're trying to go and cram an elephant down a mouse hole and it's just not going to fit. So this is done. Everything there works. It all shifts and everything. Neutrals on both the shifter and on the high-low work. Everything bolts up. It all rolls. The steering works. So next we got to target this. I just wanted to end this video with a thank you to everybody that's been sending me messages and stuff and about how I've been putting out new content and not repeats or reruns and stuff like that. It's been really difficult with the world the way it is, but here on the Redneck Computer Geek and RCG Racing, we're going to try to keep doing junkyard builds just as long as I possibly can. Not gonna lie, my money's tight, just like the rest of the world is right now, and YouTube certainly is not paying out like it used to because of what's going on in the world right now. But we're going to keep the junkyard builds going just as long as I can, and thank you guys very much for supporting me. It means the world to me when you guys comment and we get to discuss things, so please feel free to throw up those comments here on RCG Racing. Have a good day.